Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Rattling the Cages, Oral Histories of North American Political Prisoners. Edited by Josh Davidson with Eric King. Foreword by Angela Y. Davis. Introduction by Sarah Falconer. Narrated by Myron Willis, Gary Tiedemann, Krystal Hammond, and Curtis Michael Holland. It is an irony that the political prisoner sees the broadest strokes of the political life of the society by peering through a narrow window on the world. They challenge us to understand that the struggle for power is not a far-off goal of some future insurrectionary period, but a strategic concept that informs how we build our movement, choose our tactics, and confront the enemy every day. Alan Berkman, Holmesburg Prison. Forward to Build a Revolutionary Resistance Movement. Communiques from the North American Armed Clandestine Movement, 1982 to 1985. Neither imprisonment nor threats of death will sway me from the path that I have taken, nor will they sway others like me. More powerful than my fear of the dreadful conditions to which I might be subjected in prison is my hatred of the dread conditions to which my people are subjected outside of prisons throughout this country. Jamil Abdullah Al-Amin, formerly H. Rap Brown. Statement in Washington, July 26, 1967. In SNCC Speaks for Itself. Nobody is going to give you the education you need to overthrow them. Nobody is going to teach you your true history, teach you your true heroes if they know that that knowledge is going to set you free. As long as we expect America's schools to educate us, we will remain ignorant. Assata Shakur, in Assata Shakur, an autobiography. Josh, things are dismal, but I do find moments of joy. But real joy comes from resistance, struggle, striking a blow against the system. I don't know how to do anything else. I don't desire to do anything else. Michael Kimball, March 2022. Letter to Editor Josh Davidson. Forward. The contributors to this volume belong to a long lineage of resistance movements that have produced radical critiques and fundamental political challenges to government and society. From struggles against colonialism mounted by indigenous people and slave rebellions during past centuries, to contemporary anti-racist mobilizations and unmitigated refusals to normalize violences inflicted on the environment and on women and non-binary people, these and other forms of resistance have defined the subjugated histories of North America. These and other collective repudiations of class, race, gender, sexual, and other hierarchies are linked to global efforts to guarantee more habitable and mutualistic futures for plant life and for animal life, including the humans who have been the source of so much destruction. Rattling the Cages calls upon us to imagine the agents of history very differently from the ways we have been encouraged to think of powerful individuals as the motors of change. This collection of oral histories helps us to see political prisoners, past, present, and future, as representing the collective movements that imagine and fight for worlds with more expansive promises of freedom. They are our messengers, our dreamers, and our pioneers. They teach us that we do not have to accede to existing modes of organizing our collective existence. They remind us that there is life beyond racial capitalism, beyond heteropatriarchy, beyond the terrible web of carcerality, which they boldly critique even as it has captured their bodies. They are harbingers of the freedom to come, Let us celebrate those who have been able to join the ranks of those who are resisting outside the walls. Let us redouble our efforts to bring the others home, so that they may join us in our quest to banish prisons and police from our world to come. Angela Y. Davis. Angela Y. Davis is Professor Emerita of History of Consciousness and Feminist Studies at UC Santa Cruz. An activist, writer, and lecturer, her work focuses on prisons, police, abolition, and the related intersections of race, gender, and class. She is the author of many books, including Angela Davis, an autobiography, Are Prisons Obsolete?, and Freedom is a Constant Struggle.
Preface. I want to really capture what their prison experience was like, what they really feel about support, so the next generation, God willing there will be a next generation, will know what their mothers and fathers went through. We cannot let those experiences go to waste. We cannot turn our backs on these people with apathy or indifference. We need to love them the way they loved the world enough to fight for it. Eric King. This book is the result of years of correspondence and conversation with the anarchist political prisoner Eric King. While he was confined in some of the most brutal federal prisons across the U.S., Eric and I found comfort and affinity in reading books and discussing them. It was one way of building a relationship through prison bars. We were reading Say Nothing about the IRA, the Troubles, and former combatants sharing their stories, when he came up with the idea of interviewing political prisoners in order to bring voice to the experiences they endure in struggling to create a better world. As we began this project, Eric had been held in solitary confinement for several years, facing an additional 20 years in prison after being assaulted by a guard in defending himself. He was eventually acquitted of assaulting an officer in a jury trial. Prior to all this, Eric had been held for a brief time at United States Penitentiary, USP, McCreary, where he was forced to face off against a violent white supremacist. Also at McCreary, Eric had the opportunity to share a cell for a few days with longtime political prisoner and anti-imperialist freedom fighter Jan Laman. The stories and experiences shared between the two during that short time were mutually enlightening. That brief time of solidarity and struggle between two committed political prisoners was an early impetus for this project. I reached out to as many current and former political prisoners and anarchist prisoners as I could find to understand why they were imprisoned and how they maintained their political convictions behind bars. This primarily included those confined for their politically motivated actions, and a few who have become more politically conscious while imprisoned. As Sean Swain said in the following, "There's no such thing as an apolitical prisoner. The state is a political construct. Judges hold political office. Prosecutors make political choices. Criminal laws are passed by politicians. The act of caging a human being is a political one. To violate law, to say I am above the state rather than the state being above me, is a political act. All prisoners are political. Some are more consciously so. Those currently being held within the many prisons that cover these stolen lands were easier to locate than some of those who have since gained their freedom. Some did not want to talk about the time they did, or are continuing to do, behind bars. Some did not want their experiences shared publicly. Others were more than happy to share their stories of what they learned in prison. The conversations that follow show resilience, determination, and an unswerving commitment to the struggles for which these freedom fighters continue to fight. The principled resistance in the face of the unimaginably cruel and tortuous conditions they survive speaks volumes to their character. From former 60s and 70s radicals and Black Liberation Army (BLA) militants to current antifascists, from nonviolent Catholic activists to Animal and Earth Liberation Front, ELF and ALF saboteurs, those interviewed in the following sections continue to fight for something better, whether on this side of the prison walls or the other. Their stories and experiences also serve as shining examples of the inhumanity of the carceral system and the depravity that the state embraces to maintain power. The interviews here cover half a century of confinement in some of the most brutal, dehumanizing prisons on the planet. Some of those interviewed spent months or years confined in such places, while others spent decade after decade shipped between one hellish prison to another. Some of those included here may never return to life outside. The fact that these interviews are filled with love, compassion, concern, empathy, and hope, with humanity itself, shows that no level of carceral torture can kill the revolutionary hope for a better world. As we began this project, Eric was visited by his attorneys at the time. This is a brief snapshot of their dispatches from that visit. Eric is an anti-racist, anti-fascist anarchist, serving a 10-year federal sentence for an act of protest over the murder of Michael Brown, an 18-year-old black man who was killed by police in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. He is scheduled to be released in 2023. In a federal prison system filled with racial segregation, white supremacist gangs, and brutal violence, Eric's time locked up has been the stuff of activists' nightmares. Some prison guards and white power prisoners work together to enact vengeance on prisoners like him. Race traitors, LGBTQIA individuals, and smaller-framed people who are visibly proud of standing against fascism, as evidenced by their tattoos. Eric has been left in a cage by guards to be beaten or killed by the leader of an infamous white supremacist gang. Framed. Seriously beaten at least a dozen times. Had his head split open by a guard and rendered unconscious, and was taken into a mop closet and punched multiple times in the face by a Bureau of Prisons, BOP, lieutenant, who screamed, "Terrorists killed my daughter," before throwing the first punch. Eric was then strapped to a metal bed in 4-point restraints, while multiple guards beat him, and a captain used a shield to smother him while hissing, "I hope you get raped or beaten up at your next institution." And sure enough, he did get beaten, while guards watched. Eric currently faces a federal criminal assault prosecution for allegedly punching the BOP lieutenant in self-defense. He has been waiting for a trial on the charge for almost 3 years now. If he is convicted, this hell may be prolonged for several more years. To those not familiar with the trials and tribulations of political prisoners, this sounds shocking. For those locked up, especially those incarcerated for political reasons, and their loved ones on the outside, the inhumanity of the prison system is all too familiar. Individually examined, these instances of abuse and assault may appear to be the result of bad apples within the prison system. But viewed collectively, as this volume attempts to do, you see that the very system itself is a bad apple, rotten to the core. In the initial stages of this project, Eric wrote to me, "I want to dig deep and ask the questions that I think would be helpful to those in the future, and have experienced political prisoners teach us how they've navigated this shitty world." Here are those answers. Josh Davidson, Eugene, 2023. Josh Davidson is an abolitionist involved in numerous projects, including the Certain Days Freedom for Political Prisoners Calendar Collective and the Children's Art Project with political prisoner Oso Blanco. Josh also works in communications with the Zin Education Project, which promotes the teaching of radical people's history in classrooms and provides free lessons and resources for educators. He lives in Eugene, Oregon.
Introduction. I first read the words of people in prison in the pages of the punk zine Maximum Rock and Roll. I felt the spark of humans seeking connection with the world outside, and I wrote back. Around the same time, in 2001, a renewed movement was growing against capitalism and towards a better world. I saw activists arrested during protests, from the World Trade Organization in Seattle to the Summit of Americas in Quebec. When friends were helped by an ABC, anarchist Black Cross chapter in Genoa, Italy, I learned about the group and their work to support political prisoners being held around the globe. It was those early letters that drew me into a conversation that has lasted for decades about how to fight repression, learn the lessons from our histories, and contribute to a different vision of society. I felt that spark again, the excitement of hearing back from people I'd read about and getting to know them. I realized that I could play a small part in raising their voices. Those letters helped shape my political development. I was hearing about the history of civil rights movements from the people who had led them, members of the Black Panther Party, American Indian Movement, anti-racist and anti-war organizers, and more. And that's the beauty of the book you're holding now. You will hear firsthand from people who have participated in struggles for social justice throughout generations. I love that it's an oral history, because it feels like a conversation. It's an eye-opening glimpse of the day-to-day realities of people inside. It's a powerful call to action. As political prisoner Eric King, who helped lead these interviews from prison, says, "I realize how important outside support is more and more every day. With every new restriction, I see why the Bureau is so terrified of seeing people backed by real support. Even though I haven't had mail in over a year, some folks really turned up for me, refusing to let me be buried and forgotten." Throughout the years, I worked with many people across North America to disseminate the words of prisoners. We found many ways to collaborate, by mail, over the phone, over a shared bag of salty chips during a prison visit. We worked together on wonderful projects and events, from prison radio in Montreal to demonstrations outside of jail walls to festive holiday card writing parties. The Certain Days, Freedom for Political Prisoners calendar gave me a chance to work with Herman Bell, David Gilbert, and Chinachli, who you'll learn from in the following sections, and Robert Seth Hayes, rest in power. As Herman often reminds us, if you don't have a Certain Days calendar in your home or in your office or wherever you happen to be hanging out, consider yourself a square. With editor Jan Laumann, I helped produce For Struggle Mag, a print and online zine for prisoners and outside supporters. Jan's idea was to create an outlet for political prisoners on themes including capitalism, racism, war, and imperialism. We ended up with thousands of prison subscribers across the U.S. and Canada who contributed to the dialogue in unexpected and inspiring ways, bringing questions of feminism, hip-hop, and more to our readers. Whether the people you'll hear from in this book went inside as political prisoners or became engaged while imprisoned, they are organizers, contributing to ongoing struggles and sharing radical critiques. They know too well the lengths the state will go to maintain control. They often need help with resources, combating censorship, and finding platforms for their words, which is something many of us on the outside can give. As abolitionists, we have an opportunity to bring them into our everyday lives and organizing, not just into prison solidarity groups and publications. Beyond the political lessons, the accounts in this book are so important as testimonies to life in prison. Almost every person in this book reflects on the importance of outside support in helping them to stay connected to their families and communities, and even to stay alive. It's important on an individual level, but also as part of larger abolition movements. Former political prisoner Donna Wilmot puts it well. The fact that the movements for abolition, to defund the police, to end mass incarceration, to abolish ICE, are gaining so much strength, opens up possibilities to strengthen the work to support folks inside. Most of the people featured in this book are based in the U.S. Here in Canada, Black and Indigenous people are incarcerated at higher rates, with inhumane conditions throughout the system. The First Nations people of Wet'suwet'en and other nations have been targeted for protecting their land from exploitation. Prisoners' Justice Day has been observed since August 10, 1976, a hunger strike and day of mourning starting with Eddie Nallon, who died in prison in Millhaven, Ontario while in segregation. Today in Ontario, we are facing a prison expansion that calls for strong action. We need to support and amplify these struggles. Anne Hansen's chapter offers a unique perspective on Canadian prisoners, and in particular the situation for women in prison. She says, "Having support is one of the main reasons that people don't get abused. It is important to try to develop direct communication with prisoners." I do feel that we have a responsibility to support people in prison and to work to dismantle this unjust system. But beyond that, we also gain so much from the relationships we build with each other. At times, I have felt even more supported by my friends inside than the other way around. This work is tangible. It keeps me grounded and keeps me committed to struggle even when I'm feeling frustrated and burned out. To this day, I still feel the spark of connection, often when I need it most. While being interviewed with my dear friend Daniel McGowan, who served 7 years as part of the Green Staircases and is featured in this book, on the Which Side podcast, we were referred to as elders. We laughed. It was surprising to hear, but sort of true. But if we have wisdom to impart, it's because we've had many years of working together with the elders from our own movement. This book is so important, bringing together perspectives from different generations, movements, places, and lives. I hope you'll feel moved to pick up a pen, because there's no replacement for that direct conversation. Thank you to all of the contributors, and to Josh and Eric for the years of dedication and work to collect all of these stories, even in the midst of abuses and barriers to communication. We must let our friends inside know that they're not forgotten, and that we're here to fight for them. Sarah Falconer, Hamilton, Ontario, 2022. Sarah Falconer is a writer, editor, and digital strategist who works with nonprofits. She has been creating publications with prisoners since 2001. Sarah lives with her awesome family in Hamilton, Ontario, the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. Donna Wilmot. Donna Wilmot has been intimately involved in radical causes since a young age. In 1969, she traveled to Cuba as part of the first contingent of the Venceremos Brigades. Donna worked with numerous groups to implement revolutionary change and was supportive of political prisoners before her own arrest. In 1985, Donna and others were arrested in connection with a planned escape attempt of Puerto Rican political prisoner Oscar Lopez Rivera. In 1994, after spending 9 years underground, she and her co-defendant turned themselves in, and Donna subsequently served 27 months in prison at MCC Chicago and FCI Dublin, followed by 6 months in a halfway house in San Francisco. Since her release, she has worked tirelessly to abolish solitary confinement and ensure that younger generations continue efforts for radical change. She is a mentor with the Ann Braden Anti-Racist Organizer Training Program and a member of the Catalyst Action Fund, which promotes racial justice through elections and civic engagement. Prison life. When I first arrived in prison, I was mentally prepared on some level. I was clear about my political stance and had a lot of support from my family and political community. I had a lot of anxiety about what it would mean to leave my 4-year-old daughter, and that was certainly the most difficult part of my experience. The early days of separation from her were particularly hard, until I was able to see her on a regular basis. Adapting to a prison routine itself wasn't especially difficult, but the structure of controlled movement was quite challenging. The misogynistic culture of the prison was hard emotionally, routinely being called bitches and whores by the guards, getting pat-searched by male guards after every meal, having a light shined in my face in the middle of the night every night, and knowing male guards had access to my cell, getting strip-searched after every visit. These were some of the hardest day-to-day things that I never got used to. They were designed to humiliate you and wear down your spirit. The most helpful routines for me were centered on walking the yard every day before going to my job and participating in yoga and meditation classes as offered. I usually wrote letters, read, made phone calls, or visited with other prisoners in my unit after dinner. I had a very short sentence, so I can't say I ever lost hope about my personal situation of incarceration, which is not to deny the struggle against hopelessness I sometimes feel when I think of climate catastrophe, the violence of white supremacy, unending wars, the tremendous suffering people experience all over the world, the things that call us to the movement in the first place. I have a post-it over my desk that says, "How can I be a good ancestor?" which helps me deal with feelings of hopelessness. Knowing that I likely will not live to see many of the things I hope for, but in the scheme of things, that doesn't matter. Being in the struggle, doing what I can from where I am, is what I can do right now. My happiest moments were in the visiting room, especially with my partner and daughter. I'll always remember the day she came to visit and showed me that she was learning to read. It was incredibly emotional. I was so proud of her, and I also felt that I was missing so much of her day-to-day growth. I loved it when she could meet some of the other women I was doing time with. It seemed to make prison less scary for her, knowing that I had friends inside. It's also worth noting that the happiness of those visits was followed by emotional wipeouts. I'd go back to my cell and sleep for a very long time, and my partner said our daughter would often throw up as soon as they left the prison, then sleep all the way home. I learned to type. I learned to crochet so I could make things for my daughter. I learned to make enchiladas out of Doritos and fry onions with an iron. I had one friend inside who was dying. We had an informal healthcare team of fellow prisoners who brought her food, massaged her, wrote letters for her, helped her with hygiene, and so on, until she was too ill to stay in the unit. Being able to support her in a collective way was really important to her and to all of us. But no one should have to die in prison away from family and friends outside. It's inhumane and heartless. My sentence was short, but even in that time, things got worse. It seemed that whenever there was a new warden, they had to make their mark and let everyone know there was a new sheriff in town. When I first arrived at FCI Dublin, we were allowed to wear some of our own clothing. Then that was taken away, and we all had to wear these hideous uniforms. Then there were more restrictions regarding phone use. Important programs like meditation and yoga were canceled for being too soft on criminals. The prison was really overcrowded. Long-termers I knew had it the hardest. They went from having single cells to being 3 people in a cell built for 1. That was hard enough if you were doing a short sentence, and really awful for people who were doing decades inside. Many of the long-term prisoners talked about the negative effects of a criminal injustice system based on people testifying against each other in court, the way that it breaks an older code of conduct in which snitching was not accepted. It makes it so much harder for prisoners to trust each other in big and small ways. When a young woman in the cell next to me committed suicide after learning that her boyfriend gave evidence...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?